quickly about things that will be influential for your choices. Okay. And when you think about that, again, there's a little bit around employee versus contractor, and this is a whole other webinar altogether to sort of Rihanna's question earlier. But again, if you look here, caseload's a big one. How many assessments are we talking about? How many patients per hour am I expecting? And one of the things that's interesting that I kind of will share with everybody that we're seeing right now is, because of COVID, early on in the first lockdown, and as we returned, we actually started to add buffers between patients, which is okay. We've lengthened treatments because it was adapting to infection prevention and control procedures, right? And there's new protocols for all of us. But a lot of us have stayed at that because it's like, well, it's easier. Okay, fair. It's easier. Maybe it's still better, the type of clinic and the size of your clinic. But you have to remember, if you've reduced the amount of patients per hour, hopefully you increased your fees. But if you didn't increase your fees, then you're actually going to have less income. But it might be okay if you're not taking charting home. So like you can see there's all these things that you guys really will have to start to think about. Am I actually in a really good situation, or am I really struggling with the grass being greener somewhere else? Okay. So again, what's your fee schedule? Okay. Some clinics actually offer premium shifts. So if you needed to make a little bit of extra cash, and that was a goal for you in 2022, what happens if you worked an additional evening? And is there some fees? And I've worked with lots of clinic owners that actually have, if you work 3 evenings a week, they actually have an extra percentage for you. Or if you work a Saturday, they actually have an incentive for doing that. Okay. And again, you have to think about your actual schedule. Do you actually work times that are the highest demand times in the clinic if you're on split? Okay. What is the type of patient persona? Met with a guy too the other night. He was like, well, my split's good. I'm not sure. I think I could do better. But he has his ideal patient population. I told him in my patient population, I was like, oh, I don't want to work with that patient population. And that's okay. So that's actually part of it, right? That's what keeps us motivated, happy to go work with all those patients. What's the social economic status in some of those cases? Is it hard because you're always dealing with people who have time or financial limitations? This is a big one. So Sam, I think this was your question. How do you guarantee, what is the traffic into the clinic? Where is the clinic, right? What are their marketing strategies there? There's some clinics that have their marketing can be turned on like this, and they can turn it off just like that because they have too many patients they don't know what to do with due to the shortage of clinicians across the country, both physio and chiro side. Okay. Do you actually have the equipment that you need, right? And the reason I put equipment here is not so much to say, hey, does Serge have this machine and Vanita has this machine? It's like, no, do you have the equipment that would allow you to take patients throughout a full plan of care? So I've met with lots of clinicians and they're just like, well, I don't have any equipment that the patient would even want to still come in for near the end of their rehab. All right, well, what is it that you would need? Because I can tell you right now, and I challenge people with this all the time, but due to time of the webinar, we often will discharge patients and we all admit we underdose them for activities that they return to. So the question for me is, why are we discharging or closing off a plan of care knowing that we underdosed a patient? How are we following up with that patient? How are we reactivating that patient in the future? And these are all other strategies. If you just focus on patient care and you look at the low-hanging fruit, there's opportunity there. Okay. Looking at clinical operations, one of the biggest areas of opportunity for me is how do we optimize schedules? How strong is the front desk, for example, of making a cancel, turning that into a reschedule for us? Do we have the availability to do that? Have you looked at the schedule? Can we even take a canceled appointment and turn that into a virtual appointment just due to the fact that the patient can't make the time, right? So looking at some of the clinical operations as well, that gives us the support systems that we need. Because again, 70% of a missed appointment is no better than 50% of a missed appointment. No better than 35% of a missed appointment. Okay. And the last thing too is just, for me, sometimes when I look at this, a lot of us will think about Con Ed, right? So again, obviously this is more an employee situation, but do you have the professional development opportunities or the internal supports that help you gain even more confidence in your competence, right? So this is a big sort of theory I kind of share all the time with younger clinicians is you have competence, you just don't have the confidence yet, right? So yes, you can take more courses, but do you have sort of a continuing education blueprint that will help you with your confidence so you don't actually start questioning, well, I better only book 1 or 2 visits with the patient. How could I ever get to, patient visit average of what Daryl's suggesting is this, 8 to 10, let's say, when I don't even really know what to do with the next session? That's what your internal systems and your supports are for. That's what your professional development opportunities are. Grow your confidence in your competence. Okay. So